This coming November, I'm having a solo exhibition at Yorkshire Sculpture Park. For this show, I'm producing a whole range of work, from functional pieces to pots that are a bit more sculptural. For some of these more decorative pots, I wanted to introduce a new range of clays whilst using the same clay bodies to create very subtle differences in surface and texture, whilst the forms of the pots themselves remain very obviously in my body of work. I'll be throwing these pots on bats on the wheel, and in order to do that, I need to prepare a small piece of clay to throw first. Usually this process of spiral wedging with two hands is hidden by my right hand, which also helps me knead the clay, but by doing it with one you can see the rough spiral shape that forms. With two hands it looks like this, and this process removes any air pockets from the stoneware whilst knitting together any uneven textures, so it's smooth and consistent throughout. You'll recognise this stoneware as the stuff I normally use. It's very high in iron, hence the colour, and this is really just going to be used to make the foundations of the throwing bat system I use for my wheel. It's a bit of an old and slow method, but it means I can use various sizes of bats throughout the day as I throw a whole range of work. The piece of clay is centred, then flattened into a disc, and I want it to be as flat as possible. It's then given a quick clean up, and then using a flat kidney I scrape away the top layer of slip. I then spend maybe 4 or 5 minutes blasting this pad of clay until it's leather hard, at which point I score a number of lines into it, as these seem to help the bat stick a bit better. I might be wrong about that, or maybe it's a placebo, but it definitely seems that bats pressed onto this surface are held more securely, as compared to one just left entirely flat. With the clay bat ready, I can fetch the new stoneware. Recently, Potclays sent me 8 bags of new stoneware to try out, and I will be doing a more thorough video where I test each of these with small bowls, like I did in a previous video. So thank you, Potclays, and Mark Winkle especially for sending these. This particular body I'm using is called grogged pink, for the reason that when it's fired to 1100 to 1160 degrees Celsius, it turns a pink colour, but when fired to 1290, I imagine it'll be closer to a rich purpley brown, especially in reduction. They describe it as a general purpose hand-building clay body, but I'm going to try throwing with it. On the left is my usual high iron stoneware, and on the right is the new grogged body. Grog is what we call the particles that you can see within the clay, and they're usually made up from ground up ceramic, so clay that's already been fired. This added material prevents it from warping and cracking. Otherwise this stoneware is made up of crank and terracotta, and it feels really rough. I know throwing with this is going to be a little bit painful, like sandpaper running beneath your hands. I haven't thrown with really textured clay for a long time, but I'll treat it like any stoneware I use. So I'll begin by wedging the clay up for the exact same reason I did the previous lump at the start of this video. You can see that the clay had a more difficult time keeping its shape as I wedged it. It tears and splits, and I hope this wouldn't be the case when thrown on the wheel, but with water covering it, it should flow a bit more freely without coming apart like this. With all the added grog in this body, it doesn't feel very sticky, which personally is a quality I rather like, but I know just by looking at this clay that it's going to be a bit messier to work with due to the terracotta it contains. To attach MDF bats onto this pad of clay, I first wet it slightly and then dampen, not soak, the back of the bat. It shouldn't slide around easily. If it does, you've likely added too much water. Instead it should feel tacky, and it should stick down nicely onto the stoneware. Now to attach it, instead of pushing it down, I instead press down and rub it back and forth in place, and the friction this creates should be enough to hold it really firmly in place. I then dampen a patch in the middle where the clay is going to be flung onto. And as I begin centering it, the very first thing I do is seal the base where clay meets wood by squeezing in my little finger of my right hand right around the bottom, like so. This is just another thing you can do to help keep the piece of clay on the bat, and by forcing in the clay around the base of the lump of clay, it pushes the material up into the right place for coning and centering, and I can already really feel the difference. The sharp specks of grog grind against your skin, and it feels as if I really have to press harder to make the clay move. I then press the lump of clay down to give it a flat top to make it the shape I need it to be before it can be opened up and thrown into the bowl shape I hope to make. A bowl is a stretch, perhaps. You won't have seen me throw this shape before, but you may have seen me trim something like it and glaze it too. It's more of a sculptural vessel, an angular bowl that sits on a pedestal of sorts, with ledges thrown and trimmed on the inside and outside. Once centred, and with my elbows tucked into my waists and my forearms resting on the plastic wheel tray, I'll press a finger and thumb into the centre and I'll push them down until there's about half a centimetre left between the base of the pot and the MDF. You don't want to make the base too thin, as otherwise there's simply not enough material to work with when trimming the base of the piece, nor do you want it to be too thick. Otherwise the pot will be bottom heavy, and all that clay that was left in the bottom should have been thrown up into the walls of the piece, helping it gain height and width. I use the pads of my fingers of my left hand to form the base, and then to make things a bit more manageable, I push the clay inwards so it's facing in the direction I want it to travel when I begin pulling. Whenever you're working with a new clay, you never know quite how hard you can push it at the start, hence these tentative pulls. As you squeeze this clay, the coarse particles become more apparent and dig back into the knuckle you lift with, so it helps to work relatively quickly. For instance, if you spend an awfully long time centering the lump of clay, you'll begin wearing away the clay body itself, revealing the specks of grog, to a point where it actually becomes quite uncomfortable to use, so speed definitely helps. But, and this applies to any grogged clay body, if it is beginning to feel a bit too sandy, you can use a kidney to scrape away the outer layer of clay, revealing a slightly smoother surface underneath. But as the walls got thinner with this piece, it became easier and easier to throw. To lift up the walls of clay, I begin by making an indentation in the base of the pot, by pressing in with my knuckle. On the inside, just above where I'm pushing in, I push out slightly with my fingertips. This creates a bulge of clay, and it's that which I'm essentially lifting up. And as my hands traverse the walls, the gap between my fingers stays relatively even. I also keep the wheel speed consistent, as is the rate at which I move my hands. And once I've initiated a pull, I'll keep my hands travelling up and moving, as if I linger in one spot for too long, or go back down as I'm pulling up. It creates inconsistencies in the wall, thick and thin spots, twists and buckles, all of which can lead to the pot losing shape or collapsing. With the rough form thrown, I can begin shaping this piece properly. These pots have a tapering lower section, and above that are two planes slightly offset from each other, and I find detailed throwing like this is easier to do with my fingertips on the outside, rather than my knuckle. I want to create a step outward on this portion of the vessel, so in this case I'm just pushing out more than I'm pushing in, but my hand on the outside always remains on the pot itself, bracing the walls and making sure they aren't pushed out too much. It's perhaps not the best idea to make pots like this and glaze them and reduction fire them without any testing beforehand, but in this instance I don't really have time. I know this clay body should fire to the temperatures I want, but there's no knowing really how my glazes will react over this particular body. All I know is that with the glazes I use, the clay bodies underneath have a considerable impact on how the glazes look. I just hope the groggy, textured quality of this clay isn't entirely lost by the glaze that coats it. And I'm hoping where the edges of the pot are sharper, around the rim and around the ledge on the outside, the texture on the stoneware really shines through. But we'll have to see about that. With the shape approximately there, I can begin to scrape away all the excess slip that covers the exterior of this form, and at this stage you can really hear the grog as it scrapes against the metal edge of the kidney. But this does leave me with a smoother surface, although that will change dramatically when it comes to trimming this piece, as all the particles of grog will be ripped through the body, and I think I'll be left with a much more textured surface. For a majority of the work on the outside, I don't directly push the metal into the clay. Instead, I hold the edge of the kidney roughly where I want the profile of the pot to be, and then from the inside, I push the clay out against the metal edge. Doing this imparts less stress on the piece overall, and it should mean you have an easier time shaping your pots, provided you can actually reach one hand inside the shape you're making, which isn't always the case, such as certain shapes with a more enclosed top, but in those cases the more enclosed form adds strength to the shape overall, which makes scraping the outside clean easier. Next I begin scraping away some of the excess clay around the base. This excess we often call the skirt, and there's no harm in it remaining if you are throwing on bats, as you don't have to lift the pot up with your hands anyway. But if I was going to remove this pot with my hands only, then I would make sure I have a nice area of clay around the base that's relatively dry and free of slip, as this makes it much easier to remove. And to shape the pedestal section around the base, I just use the back of this trimmer. This shaping process did cause the pot to undulate somewhat, which is very apparent in the rim and the line beneath it, but both were relatively easy to correct just by redefining the shape against the metal kidney. Overall though, compared to my normal stoneware body, whilst throwing this was a bit more of a challenge, it felt so sturdy throughout. The next step is to refine the interior. I sponge out the water and then use a chamois leather on the rim, which compresses those particles of grog back into the clay body and makes this edge not quite so sharp. I then have to find the correct orientation to hold this tool to smooth over some of the more prominent throwing rings left in the form, as I don't particularly want them to be a prominent feature in this pot once it's glazed. I don't mind if they're subtly there, but if they stand out and the glaze really sinks into them, then they can become quite distracting. Lastly, for this pot, I use the smooth corner of this plastic mud tools kidney to define this interior step, which is another feature the glaze should interact with by gathering onto it and pooling into a thicker band of intense colour and breaking sharply on the edge. Breaking is how we refer to glaze that's peeled off a sharp edge, revealing the clay underneath. Nothing's actually breaking, it's just a way of describing how glaze reacts over sharp edges. And with just one last touch on this outer edge, this more sculptural form is complete, or at least it is for the time being, as its shape and the texture of the surface will change quite a lot during the trimming stage, and that will likely be the subject of my video that follows this. To remove the bat from the wheel, I use a sturdy wooden tool to pry the bat away, and I do this bit by bit until the bat just pops off cleanly. I won't just pry it and force it from one side, as doing so can cause the wooden bat to bend, which causes the pot itself to bend and deform. There's some slight chattering on the outer surface, but I'll be able to remove that at the trimming stage, although that'll be slightly different itself, as I won't be using my tungsten carbide turning tools, as the larger particles of grog might chip their blades. This is one of the pots I was using as inspiration, which you may have seen me trim and glaze recently, and I'll leave links to both of those films in this video's description. This isn't the only new clay body I've been using. I've been testing a number of these stonewares from Potclays these past few days, and I will make a much more comprehensive video about them soon. This is the same body I was throwing with, only it's lightening as it's beginning to turn bone dry. I have a feeling this clay will undergo many changes throughout the making process, and hopefully these clays all fire successfully, as I'd love to introduce some new surfaces into my range of pots. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you next week.